What's up guys, welcome to Voicey here. This is your host Captain Zach and today's subreddit is r/ProRevenge. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. This story's called, You Fire Me for Talking About Unionizing? I'll Spill All Your Dirty Secrets. This is a bit of a long one. Please bear with me to the end. I used to work for a plasma collection center back from 2008 to 2010. Even though I was a certified phlebotomist, I was placed up in reception and I slowly worked my way up to senior receptionist and trainer. I was also training for quality control and was known for keeping detailed notes of issues that we were in need of fixing or training, which I would forward on to management. Some of the things I'd keep track of were violations of FDA and GHA, which means German Health Authority since we were run by a German-Swiss company, as well as OSHA issues. Because I wasn't seeing anything being done, I eventually stopped reporting the issues to avoid being labeled a troublemaker and just kept time and date info, and if I could, I got pictures with date stamps just to cover my own ass in case something bad went down. Fast forward to June of 2010, and I was talking with one of my coworkers about the proposed cuts to benefits and the high turnover rates at our center. They were complaining to me about being afraid to call in sick because others had been fired for it, and I mentioned that they were putting donors in danger by us being sick since we weren't allowed to wear face masks unless we were in the back in the donor area, and even then it was the clear face shields to prevent us getting hit if someone leaked on us. Without thinking about it, I talked about how unions protected against this sort of thing in other medical fields, and how that might be something we should consider to help protect us. The coworker got weirdly quiet, but I figured it was because I was talking about a subject most people don't like talking about. Nothing really happened until about August, when another coworker grabbed my ponytail while I was working with a donor and yanked down on it, jerking my head back. I'd informed everyone I worked with to never touch my hair because it was a trauma trigger for me from being cruelly mistreated. And so this coworker knew I would wind up in panic mode from this. She had seen it happen before when a donor touched my hair, so this was deliberate. I remember telling her to not do that again or I would make her get away. She of course walked up and yanked my hair even harder, and I hit her. The supervisors went into damage control mode as I fled the area, still in a panic response. And one of them cornered me and demanded I write down what happened because I had assaulted someone on the property. I wrote my side as well and told them to check the security footage since the camera was aimed right at the booth I was working at and had a clear view of the events. Turned out everyone else told an entirely different and creepily similar story than what I told, and the footage couldn't be found even though less than half an hour had passed. I was fired for assault less than an hour later and escorted off the premises after being given 5 minutes to clear out my locker and get my belongings. So on to the revenge, which was two-pronged. My partner was there on that day and saw what happened, and tried to offer to write up what he saw, but was denied. So the next time he went in, he wound up being screened by the coworker who yanked my hair, who didn't even get a write-up for assaulting me, and asked her loud enough that the whole reception area could hear. "So, how are those 50 shekels of silver, Judas? Was it worth it?" Which left her in tears and another person had to finish screening him. He wound up being banned for 6 months for his attitude, but he claims it was more than worth it. While this was going on, I had been reaching out to the various organizations and departments that oversaw plasma donation and collection. The FDA, OSHA, CDC, GHA, and the like. I informed them of the fact that we always cleaned prior to an inspection, but we didn't keep things that clean day to day, and suggested a surprise inspection should be in order. I also handed over copies of everything I'd collected and tried to report, but always got shut down. I learned a few months later that all of the management and several of the other techs and supervisors were all suddenly reassigned, and the FDA, GHA, and OSHA had all slammed fines on the center for violations dating back almost the entire time I worked there. Alright, and they include a bunch of extra information. This is a US located center. The company was started in Switzerland and is reviewed by the German Health Authority, and was then bought out by an Australian company but runs centers in the US. The company is also very anti-union. A receptionist at a plasma center is way different than a receptionist at a typical office. We're responsible for donor intake, donor screenings, including minor blood collection, checking levels such as hematocrit and protein, and verifying donor eligibility, on top of things such as keeping donor files up to date and cleaned up if they're too big, making a new file, quality control, and assisting in areas where needed, such as the donor floor or processing. And that's on top of filing and answering phones when able. I was upfront with my bosses and coworkers about my PTSD and triggers due to past experience with trying to hide them and it turning out badly outside of work. Yes, my partner's comment was more petty than anything else. And for those wondering the meaning behind it, he was saying she sold out someone she claimed was a friend for a reward of some sort. I'm sorry, I can't take it seriously because the boyfriend called that woman Judas, and all I can think about is Jonah Hill from Superbad calling Michael Cera frickin' Judas. I love that movie. Seth Rogen is an amazing writer. But regarding this story, wow, that's actually insane and very concerning. I'm glad you did a partial whistleblow, but you really need to seek some sort of compensation from being, whatever happened, assaulted, yeah. This story's called, They Want My Money? Oops! This isn't my story, but is the story of a departed uncle. Rest in peace, Haj. Backstory. In World War II, my uncle Haj was an engineer with the Royal Air Force. He rapidly climbed the ranks and ended up being the head engineer at a local base. After the war, he met his wife of 45 years, Eve. It was the typical post-war relationship, without children though due to complications. He quickly found a job at our village coal mine, known locally as The Pit. He went from engineer to foreman very quickly. The man had a knack for leadership, that's for sure. He and Eve, some of his Royal Air Force buddies, and his sister, my grandmother, often went to Spain for holidays, at least once a year before they all retired. After that, whenever they felt like it. The family. The unfortunate truth is that family isn't always nice. My grandmother was his only surviving direct family. Eve, on the other hand, had a large family. Very large. The trouble with large families is that often there's a few bad eggs. In this case, it was quicker to count the good ones. As Haj would put it, the trouble with eggs is you can only tell the good ones by spinning them quick or dunking them in water. I don't fancy going to prison. More often than not, Eve's family would drop by and ask to borrow money. Not from Eve, she had none. Haj had always been industrious, saving as much as he could and only really spending what he had to, other than the holidays of course. The incident. When I hit 18, legal drinking age in the UK, he took me for my first beer, as my dad worked nights and had to sleep. He didn't drink, which was uncommon for him as he was a regular at the working men's club we were in. Haj, how come you're not drinking? I can't in good conscience drink your money without you getting a sniff. Well, I suppose one can't hurt. Don't tell Nip, his name for my grandmother, Sheila, but I've just been diagnosed with diabetes type 2. Don't want to take any chances. I'll keep your secret, but you need to tell her, just on the off chance. I'll tell her in good time, kiddo. Now get it down, you, before it goes flat. Neither of us took much notice to the people around us, so we didn't notice Eve's nephew in the corner. 5 years pass. I've seen him a few times, less than I'd like, because of work and him going overseas. The build-up. I visited my grandparents one day to find my grandmother sobbing, with Haj sat on the sofa. Put the kettle on, kid. I need to tell you something. I make a coffee for Gran and Granddad, hot chocolate for me and green tea for Haj. Now listen up. I've not got long on this wretched planet, but you're not to cry over me. I've been diagnosed with late-stage cancer and couldn't be freaking happier to be leaving. Sorry, Nip. I know you don't want to hear this, but it has to be said. You and yours will be looked after, of course, but you're not to tell Eve and her family. To everyone, I've made up a new will. I want everyone to go to the reading. I prepared a little gift for the family. Shortly after this chat, we found out he passed away. We kept it from my grandmother that he'd taken his own life. It'd destroy her. Let it be said that Haj was always a man independent of others. He made his choice so Gran wouldn't suffer seeing him deteriorate over time. The revenge. We went to the reading as a family, like he asked. It's the only thing he ever asked of us. We'd seen people we'd never met. never even heard of, so of course, there were some sullen scowls across the table.
Now that we're all here, please watch this video. Haj has a message for you all.
Haj from beyond says, "Now then, I imagine this will be a shock to most of you, but I had cancer. If you're watching this, I want you to know that some of you made my last few years pleasant. Others, well, we'll get to you." To my side of the family, he says, "Not one of you came to me asking if I was alright or wanted anything done. Instead, you asked if I wanted a hand with anything. For this, I thank you. I've never had anyone do anything for me unless they were my underlings in the Royal Air Force, and I didn't want to aim to start when I found out I was on my way out. You knew me better than most of my close family. I'll tell you if something's wrong. Good on you. Now then, let's get to the good bit." To Eve's family, "You lot, where do I begin? When I took our Nip's grandson out for his first pint, apparently the walls had ears and one of you overheard me tell him I had diabetes. Shame you had to say, 'It's a shame it wasn't cancer.' Guess what? You got your wish, eh? The rest of you, whenever you visited me, you asked more often than not if you could borrow money. It's fine, I don't mind lending it to you, but I did expect to get it back. So here's how this is gonna work. I've split my money and put it in trust with my oldest friend, the lawyer. Nobody is getting a thing till Eve pops her clogs, so don't bother asking. Eve can stay in the house I worked my ass off for until she either dies or has to go into care for any reason. The house is not to be sold until after she dies. Lazy as she is, she's still my wife. Once she dies, the house is to be sold at a reasonable price to the next owners, and the money from that is to be added to the total for my finances and split with the family. Eve's is her own and she can do with it what she wants, other than add it to my total. Lawyer has been left with instructions on this. Now, here's how it'll be split. If you've borrowed money from me and paid it back, you'll get a fair share based on your age at the time of my death. If you haven't repaid the money you borrowed, you'll still get a cut, minus what you owe me. For some of you, I hope you know I'm laughing at your squirming from beyond the grave. Serves you right. Nip, my only living family, you'll get the lion's share of whatever's there, to be done with what you will. If you're not wanting to keep it, lawyer has been paid for any services you may require. Trust him, he's a good lad and saved my ass on more than one occasion in the war. Nip's son will get a decent chunk to help with whatever you need, and your children will be provided for as well. 2. My mom, not once have I heard anything bad about you. You're getting a cut too. Like it or lump it. OP, you've been a great help the last couple of weeks. I called you unfairly at 3 a.m. to help me out of the bath after finally giving up on getting myself out. Sorry you had to see that. You didn't have to help the next day with the decorating either. If you weren't already on your career path, you'd make a fine tradesman. You'll receive a cut to be determined by the near future's events. Use it how you will. The rest of you, I'm utterly freaking disgusted to have known you. I mentioned earlier that Eve can live in the house till she dies or is put into residential care. If either of these happens, nobody is to live in the house. I don't want anyone I don't trust in there. Now, quit your crying and go about your lives, Hodge. As you can imagine, people kicked up a stink about this. We nodded to the lawyer and left. Shortly after the funeral, Eve went into a retirement home with her own money. Hodge was locked up as per his request. She had gotten more than enough to keep her afloat for many more years. A couple of months down the line, we all got called back to the lawyer's office, a little bemused. Again, we're directed to watch a video. I'm not surprised that this video has been played. Some of you just don't follow orders. If you're watching this, it means that someone I don't trust was found to be living in my house. I don't give a damn who it is. Lawyer has instructions of what to do next, but for the sake of his voice and sanity, whoever was in the house against my wishes is now stricken from the will entirely. If the others feel they want to share their money with you, that's their loss. You're not getting a penny from me. As it turns out, my cousin, who bullied me in school, and her family, as in her on and off boyfriend, 2 kids and a dog, had moved into the house after convincing Eve to move out because they needed the house. What they hadn't counted on is nosy neighbors. Hodge asked them to watch the house, and if they saw anyone new in there or any signs of moving, to report to the lawyer for updates. In return, they'd get a cut of the money he had. They're good people. The lesson? Don't screw with a war vet. That's some Batman level of preparedness right there. That's kind of really badass. I'm interested in knowing if any of y'all have ever had relatives or friends that did something similar with their will, because that's really, really cool. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.